Hi, and thanks for listening to this short presentation on the use of questionnaires in undergraduate research. The purpose of this presentation is just for me to discuss the use of questionnaires in research to give you some kind of idea of how we go about using them, why we use them, the benefits of using them, um, and we're going to have a little look at some of the issues with using questionnaires as well, just so you can get a bit of a balanced understanding. Okay, first things first, look at this question and think about that. When did you last fill out a questionnaire? I'm sure we can all sit here and think about a questionnaire we filled out recently, be that one that was online, be that one that comes through the post, or maybe it was a market research questionnaire that you were stopped in a shopping centre and got asked some questions. But we all get sent them. We all fill them in on a fairly regular basis. So I want you to think back to the last time you filled one out. Think back to that point, and then think about, was it a good or was it a bad questionnaire? Think about how long it took you to fill it in. Did the questions seem to relate to the aims of the questionnaire? Okay, when we're filling questionnaires out as the recipient, it's important. It's important that that questionnaire is easy for us to circumnavigate. It's important for that questionnaire isn't going on for pages and pages. It's important that the questions directly relate to the aims of the questionnaire. Okay, and these are all things that you should be able to think about and make sure that they are key to the design of any questionnaire that you might want to use in any research. So, why use? Why use a research questionnaire? What sort of reasons can we come up with? Well, first of all, it's very easy to collect information and vast amounts of information via the use of a questionnaire. Okay, and I'm going to talk a little bit further on about how we might deliver them to our participants, and that in this day and age is the vital component. We can deliver a questionnaire to a lot of participants in one go in this day and age, which makes a questionnaire a very effective form of collecting information for research. So that they are easy to deliver for the most, which again makes that data collection process a lot simpler and a lot easier for us to organise, which is important when we're looking at it in regards to student research in particular. You guys are going to have other pressures on you, other modules where you're going to have assignments for, you're going to have your jobs outside of university taking up time, you're going to have your placement in level 6 taking up a lot of your time. The easier it is for you to collect your data, the better. If we're going to look at it pragmatically and think, well, how can we make this a more effective and efficient process for you? Obviously, it has to fill the requirements of your research. You can't just substitute a questionnaire in for something that for an interview, for example. But if a questionnaire is appropriate for what it is that you're trying to find out, they are a very effective method of data collection. As it says there, that third point, that can lead to more in-depth research investigation. So we can use a questionnaire as part of a sampling procedure. So we may well be looking to interview via one-on-one interviews or maybe a focus group. We can canvass a larger group of participants with a questionnaire, evaluate the information we've gathered, and then look at who might be a more appropriate subject that you might want to then follow up with an interview to gather more in-depth information from. They're very straightforward to analyse as well. So as it says there, we can transfer the data we collect in a questionnaire into what we call descriptive statistics quite easily via the use of Excel. We're all, I'm sure, pretty au fait with the use of Excel, and questionnaire data transfers very easily into charts, into graphs, into tables, whatever the most appropriate graphical representation of the data might be. It's easy to create that within packages such as Excel. So, what when we're putting a questionnaire together, what sort of or how do we go about putting the questions together? Well, what you've got to think is that each question must have a purpose. It must actually underpin gathering that data that relates to your research question. So you have to make sure that your questions are linked to your research aims. Otherwise, they're not serving any purpose, which is vitally important. So you've got to justify each question. So when you're putting your questionnaire together, you may well look at related research to stuff that you're looking to investigate, and they may have a questionnaire. You can adapt the questionnaire that they've used. You can take parts out of other researchers' questionnaires that suit your requirements, as well as incorporating some of your own questions. So you need to be able to justify the inclusion of each question at each stage, and then you've got to think about the little things like, am I going to use closed or open questions? Remember, no matter what type of question you use, closed or open, you will only be gathering quantitative information via a questionnaire. You will not get true interpretivist, qualitative, information rich data that you will get from an interview through open questions in a questionnaire. What they can lead to is a questionnaire can lead to identifying someone you may want to interview, where you will get that type of information, but you won't get that from a questionnaire in itself. So, what types of ways or methods of delivery of questionnaires are there? Well, as I said, it's quite easy to canvass a large group of participants via a questionnaire. And we can do that via a postal questionnaire, which would probably be unlikely that you guys might undertake a postal questionnaire at undergraduate level. Now, the main issue of that is the cost of posting one out. However, you can self-administer them, so you can hand out hard copies. If you were to say be looking to investigate something with one of the sports clubs at St Mary's, just as a really random example, you can go along to a training session with lots of hard printed copies, hand them out, get them filled in, collect them in immediately. Very easy way to get a lot of them filled in, which it sort of almost guarantees a decent response rate, which can be a big issue if you're posting questionnaires out. Is that you'll get a poor response rate, but if you're actually stood there saying, "Oh, can you fill this out for me, please?" The likelihood is, unless someone's in a really big rush of a genuine reason or have a genuine reason why they can't, they will fill that out for you. You can use some websites out there, SurveyMonkey being the obvious one that springs to mind, where you can actually create an online survey via different services on websites, and then they can be emailed around. Those are possibly is possibly the most convenient method out there in this day and age, with lots of emails going through though. To individuals, there is the danger that they're going to be deleted or ignored. So that's something you've got to take into account. Again, you need those high response rates for quantitative data collection. So you would have to send out a lot more than you actually need to ensure you get an appropriate amount through a computer, or through any questionnaire, but a computer generated one as well. As I said, it's like the postal effort. If you're not actually there face to face, it's difficult to sort of guarantee that you'll get those response rates. You can also administer a questionnaire yourself. A bit more time consuming, but it's another one a way of face to face delivering the questionnaire. So you'll be asking the questions, and you'll be ticking the boxes. You'll be writing down the answers, whatever's required for the questions. Again, probably would offer you a bit more of a higher success rate in regards to getting those filled in, but this one would be a little bit more time consuming, as you can only do one at a time. You can't give them out and expect to get them back all at the same time. You've got to literally go to each person one at a time, so that's a bit more time consuming. So as you can see, there's a variety of methods of delivering a questionnaire. The general rule of thumb is going to be, you might not want to just rely on one particular way. You might want to, get some go to a training session, as I said, go to a lecture, go to I don't know, a school, go to wherever it might be. Actually, dish them out, but then follow that up with an email with the questionnaire. So that would hopefully get you a few more filled in. Um, you just need to identify what way is going to suit you and how easy it will be to collate that data. Looking back at the computer generated ones, in fact, some of those systems like SurveyMonkey will actually do a little bit of those descriptive, or create, sorry, a little bit of those descriptive statistics for you, in fact. So although it may not be enough for a dissertation, for example, it can give you a general idea of some trends that might be occurring in your answers, and just give you a bit of an understanding of the type of data you're gathering before you then put all of that information into a raw data table and collate it. I'm going to talk about the descriptive statistic process in a moment. Just hold fire on that one. Okay, so there are pros and cons to the use of questionnaires. They are very economical. They're very easy to distribute to large numbers. And for example, if you're emailing it out, or if you're just printing a batch of them up, it doesn't cost a lot of money to print 50 pages up or 40 pages up, whatever it might be. And if you're giving them out for people to fill in, you can get them filled in very quickly. As I said, if you keep the design brief, if you keep them short, to the point, no more than 2 pages, they're not going to take long for the participants to fill out. So they're easy to distribute to large numbers, time effective, and not very expensive to create. Now, if your sample is known, if you're aware of all of the details of your participants, they're fairly easy to arrange. So as I said already, you can arrange to go to a training session. You can arrange to go to a lecture. If you can arrange to go to visit the environment where there will be the largest amount of your sample in situ for you to get those filled in. So it's not a difficult process, and generally you can do that in 1 or 2 sittings rather than having to constantly go back to get them filled in 1s and 2s. You can go in and get them done en masse in maybe one or two sessions. That potential for the ease of descriptive statistical analysis means we can get a quick analysis going. We can, if we look at that descriptive analysis that we can do on Excel is very quick, very straightforward, very easy. It gives us some great descriptive understanding of the trends and the what we're likely to find out from a statistical analysis if we're going that one bit further in a quantitative study. There is that uniformity guaranteed. Okay, so we're not going to get issues between individuals if we were using a different form of data collection. We've got that single data collection method, and it's easy to make sure that we've got that uniformity across all of our participants. And this point here actually does depend on the way you deliver your questionnaire, but potentially there can be a low impact of the researcher. If I'm giving the person the questionnaire to fill in themselves, I can have no influence as the researcher on their answers. Sorry. So, however, if I'm delivering it, if I'm standing there asking the questions, there is that potential for me to have a bit of an impact and an influence on the participants surrounding. So again, we've got to think of the way we deliver it. However, if we're emailing it out or if we're giving it to the individual to fill in, I can't have any impact on that as the researcher, which is always what we're looking for. We don't want researcher bias influencing answers on the questions. So the surrounding environment as well can be important. If the individuals sat down at the desk in their bedroom filling it out on their laptop, or if they're in a coffee shop doing it on a laptop or a tablet, they're not gonna feel any influence from others. However, if I'm standing there with a queue of people and I'm asking questions and there's a queue of people waiting, that it might influence a participant to give a briefer answer, not give me the kind of information I need, or give me the information they think I want to hear, so that they can get it filled in and get out of the way, so the rest of the people can come and fill it in. So if we pick the right way of delivering it, we can ensure there is that low impact of the researcher and the surrounding environment. Again, that's something that can be a pro or a con, because it just depends solely on our delivery process. Okay, pre-coded questions. Okay, so if we've got pre-coded questions, we can sometimes bring about a biased response. So you've got to be careful on how you write your questions. Okay, you don't want to offer an opportunity for a negative answer, for example. A really simple example for me is the little questionnaire that we use for you guys to evaluate our modules halfway through each semester. A few years ago, they were evaluated themselves and changed, because the questions that we were actually asking for negative responses. We were asking things like, what was wrong with the module? What can be done to improve the module? Instead, now there's questions that are asked, when we do, for example, the stop, start, continue, what do you like about the module? What would you like to see continue about the module? What would you like to see change? So if we ask questions in a certain way, we can bring about or elicit a biased response that's going to give us the wrong kind of answer. But also, it can deter participants from answering if questions aren't written very well, if questions are designed, or, and intrusive, for example. Someone might not want to answer those questions. They might feel uncomfortable providing you with that information. So always try to design your questions, pre-code your questions in a way that it's going to be not offering any bias, or not inferring any bias, but also in a very non-intrusive manner. Try to encourage your participants to fill those questions out for you. Okay. Also, dependent on the way we write our questions, you can bring about superficial answers. We can obviously dictate the depth of an answer in the way we ask the question. So you've got to think about that. So do you want just a one-word answer? Do you want just a phrase? Do you want a sentence? You've got to think about that. And again, link it back. Think about your research aims. Think about what you're looking to get from this questionnaire. So how in depth do your questions need to go, or do your answers need to be to the questions? Do we need a fair amount of detail? Or is a superficial yes no answer all you're looking for? It might be the case. This point here about answers being untruthful. If we're asking questions that could be of a personal nature, we need to make sure that we're removing the potential for the participants to tell us what they think we want to hear. Okay, or if we're doing some sort of maybe a health-based questionnaire, and you're asking someone how much they drink, how much they smoke, for example, individuals can be a little bit embarrassed if they've got might have some poor health behaviours, for example. They might not really want to share that. Okay, so you've got to think about how probing those questions are, and how they may well elicit some untruthful answers. It's not uncommon. They will require a certain level of literacy and numeracy, and this isn't something that I expect students to come up against that often in undergraduate research. However, dependent on the type of research that is being performed, that then influences the sample population that we might be asking the questions to. But it could be that we're looking in putting a questionnaire out to someone that might have severe dyslexia, for example, or they could have psychological disabilities, other psychological disabilities. We could be in an area of low socioeconomic status where kids aren't going into school very often, and we might be questioning a group that have those low levels of literacy and numeracy. Therefore, their level of understanding of some of the questions, if we've got complicated Likert scales, for example, where there's a huge spectrum of answers available and complex questions with multiple answers, all of a sudden the participants' understanding of the use of the English language, of literacy and numeracy, become an issue. So that's something you've got to take into account. Keep those questions very simple, very straightforward. Okay, the more complex you make them, the more opportunity you give the participant to make an error when filling them in. Okay, as it says, this point here. The motivation to participate isn't measurable, so it's difficult to understand or to actually motivate someone to fill in a questionnaire. I certainly know when I receive one through the post, for example, and we get them all the time, don't we? With our spam mail through the letterbox. Um, Pretty much the first thing I do with them myself is throw them straight in the paper recycling. Okay, so you've got to take that into account. That will impact on your recipients filling them in and how many you get back. Okay, so that motivation to participate is a difficult thing to gauge. If you can't gauge it, if you don't send out enough of them, email out enough of them, hand out enough of them, whatever it is the way you're delivering them, you won't get enough back. Then your data doesn't carry the validity that's required or the reliability that's required for any level of descriptive analysis or even statistical analysis if that's what you're going to be doing. So there are a variety of pros and cons in regards to the use of questionnaires. I said I was going to talk about also about the type of descriptive analysis we can do on the data. Now this will be done through Excel. What we'll do, what we have to do, and I do have a separate presentation on this, which I will PDF and put up onto my modules in regards to descriptive statistical analysis. It doesn't just relate to questionnaires; it relates to all quantitative research. But what we will do, we would create what's called a raw data table. We would tabulate every single answer to every single question and create a raw data table. This table can be quite large, as you can imagine, if we're dealing with every question and every answer. You know, you say you've got 25 questions, would be quite a large questionnaire, I know, but say you've got 25 questions and 80 recipients, you know, that's a lot of data to put into a table. So you create that raw data table. Then we go through a tabulation process where we would create a frequency table where we crunch those numbers down. We pick the key answer or the key questions in relation to the research question that we're looking to investigate, and we create a smaller crunched version of the table that we would then use to create some graphical representation of the data. And depending on the type of question we ask, we then would potentially create something such as a pie chart if we're looking at percentages, or we might use it. So, for example, if it's a Likert scale question, we can use a pie chart to represent the percentage number of recipients that answer each point on the Likert scale. If it's a time-bonded question, we can use a line graph. You know, if we're asking individuals how many times they participate in physical activity on a weekly basis, for example, we can use a line graph to demonstrate time-bonded data. If it's a frequency question, we can use just a basic frequency question. We can use a bar graph. So what the general rule of thumb is, we would take the data that we're trying to present, and we would use the visual representation that presents that data in the most straightforward and easily understandable manner. You know, some things a pie chart won't be appropriate for. Some things a line graph won't be appropriate for. Some things a bar graph won't be appropriate for. So that's down to you as the researcher to take the information, take the data that you've gathered from each question and work out what type of graphical representation visually represents that data in the most effective manner. Now, that's not something you'll be left to do on your own, but also it's if you don't understand why you're presenting certain information in a certain manner, then it's going to be more difficult for you to discuss it. So it's something you'll do with you'll discuss with your tutor when you're doing your research and when you're analysing that data. However, it's a very simple, very quick procedure to create. For example, if you've got some data, to create a bar graph, and then you can sit back and you can eye that data. You can look at it and you think, actually, no, I think a pie chart might be a better way. So you can go back into Excel, create a pie chart, have a look at it that way. And it's almost a process of elimination for you as the researcher to try each type, have a little look, see whether you think it presents the data effectively, and away you go. Now, that's about as much as I wanted to talk to about the use of questionnaires. Now, I am happy to answer any questions. So, if any of you are actually thinking about use of questionnaire for your research, please feel free to drop me an email, and I will answer those as quickly